Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast.
Bringing a new pharmaceutical product from first-in-human trials to commercial manufacturing requires more than just technical capability. It requires a partner who can navigate regulatory complexity, scale flexibly, and maintain quality under pressure. For biotechs and pharma companies developing new chemical entities, biologics or live biotherapeutics, choosing the right CDMO can mean the difference between accelerated patient access and costly delays. Today, we're speaking with Paul Broomhead, Head of Site at SGS CDMO Solutions in Deeside, Wales. SGS is a global leader in inspection, verification, testing and certification, operating across many industries worldwide. Within their pharmaceutical portfolio, SGS CDMO Solutions provides GMP clinical trial and commercial manufacturing services from their MHRA and FDA inspected facility in Wales, UK. Paul leads site operations that span oral liquid manufacturing, granulation, tableting, capsule filling and comprehensive packaging services. In today's episode, we'll be discussing what makes a CDMO partnership actually work from a site operations perspective, how regulatory excellence and operational innovation can coexist, and where he sees the pharmaceutical manufacturing landscape heading as geopolitical pressures reshape supply chains. Paul, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, for listeners who may know SGS primarily for testing and certification services, can you briefly explain the scope of SGS as an organisation and how the integrated CDMO solutions business fits within it?
Yeah, so SGS is quite a mammoth organization, really. And like you said, it primarily exists for the test, inspection, verification industry, operates across 115 different countries, there's 100,000 employees. It works in all different sectors, industries, oil and gas, natural resources, agriculture, food testing, cosmetics, and it primarily offers that support service of testing and verifying that something is correct. So if, for example, a consumer product states that it meets a certain standard or criteria, then SGS have got a capability to test against that standard. And I guess a natural step is in the pharmaceutical world as well. Pharmaceuticals, they require lots of different testing, lots of different verifications, especially with global supply chains as well. You want to ensure that that product is meeting the quality and hitting the standards that are expected of it. So it was a natural evolution for SGS to go into pharmaceutical testing and support the pharmaceutical world. And within that, so they've got a pharma division, and that pharma division has about 10,000 employees, operates across 23 countries, mostly labs and support labs as well. And then it also has a CRO in Belgium. So when we look at that kind of full service offering from, like you said earlier, that new chemical entity all the way through to commercialization through its development phases, clinical trials, etc., then if SGS looked at that kind of supply map, then the element that was missing was the CDMO. It had the CRO, it had all of the testing capabilities. The bit that was missing was that formulation and development and the manufacturing of drugs into clinical trial. So again, it was a natural acquisition to grab a CDMO, and our site in Wales just happened to be available at the time. So yeah, it was a good synergy, and here we find ourselves as part of that kind of supply map, if you like.
Right, so really a jack of all trades then. So what specific capabilities or sort of market position will define your CDMO's competitive advantage?
It is that kind of full service offering, because again, in your introduction, you mentioned the importance of regulatory knowledge, and within our SGS network, we've got that regulatory knowledge. So I guess a biotech can be comfortable in coming to SGS and saying, well, I can have my product fully developed, all the formulation done, I can put it through a clinical trial, I can have all my regulatory submissions supported by SGS. I don't need any CMC consultancy because it's already there. And actually, depending on what the market is at the end, we can do the commercialization. So we've made ourselves a one-stop shop. And the great thing about SGS is it's the same offering no matter where you go. That as a global organization or a big organization, they are very good at giving the customer the impression that it's a single site organization. So irrespective, we might use multiple sites to do stuff, then it's all trafficked and channeled through a single portal or a single site. And so therefore the customer thinks it's just one entity that they're dealing with.
Yeah, so really that sort of integrated service throughout the whole process. Where are you concentrating your technology and digital investments then? And what sort of measurable outcomes are you hoping for with technology and digital integration?
Yeah, so obviously we're in Industry 4.0, the fourth revolution of industry now, and that's all to do with comms, integrated technologies, that connectivity of technologies. So we've made quite a bold statement that we want to be on this particular site. We want to be digitally native by 2028, and we're as a small kind of operation, a small formulation development operation, evolving into a larger scale CMO. Then we're paper based, and that's how smaller companies will start and operate. And it's comfortable being paper based, but we want to move into a digital sphere. So we're converting a lot of our paper systems into digital systems and integrating those systems as well. So we don't have to have discrete functions across the business. So we can offer, by the end of 2028, we're hoping, fingers crossed, large fingers crossed, that we will have the full genealogy from the very start of a project. So on day one of someone asking us to do formulation and development all the way through to commercial manufacturing, we've got the full genealogy of that in one digitized space, and that's accessible to a customer as well. So that's where we're starting. We're converting all our paper-based systems. We're looking into developing smart factory in our manufacturing operations as well, so we can get good data feedback and accumulate as much data as possible, which will help with making decisions on projects.
You mentioned digitally native. What does that mean?
So essentially, everything that we do is digital first. So we
Right.
don't look at paper at all. We're aiming to have no paper on site. So if it can't be done digitally, then we don't want to do it. So it's when people come into the business, they will enter into a pure digital world.
Yeah, I see. And so a minute about regulatory and operations. So your facility holds MHRA and FDA inspections. Can you just walk me through how you maintain that regulatory standard whilst also driving operational efficiency?
Yeah, so we've got a quite a good quality assurance team on site. They're very good at driving regulatory excellence and compliance excellence throughout the business. So we have regular kind of Gemba walks, I suppose you call them, compliance walks through the business. We regularly internally audit a lot. We scrutinize our own processes. We're constantly evolving those processes, and we educate. So we have a program whereby we educate, we cascade that kind of compliance knowledge throughout the business, and we repeat that over and over again until it's sunk in and it becomes a natural behavior on site. Those are the main things. That's all supported by what I said previously, that digital environment as well. So the more things that we can make fail safe in a digital world, the better it is for us. We introduce scanning for transactions from one process to another. All of our processes are scanned digitally, so there is no room to make a typo or to make an error while transferring data from one system into another. It's all done seamlessly.
Talk me through that a bit then. Talk me through how a sponsor experiences data flow and project transparency when working with you. What technologies are you bringing in?
So one of the first things that we did a couple of years ago was we brought in a cloud-based task management system. So the traditional way of managing projects is using Microsoft Project or large paper Gantt charts, and there was the project manager was the one that had the privilege of seeing everything from end to end and only sharing the snippets that they needed to share. So we moved to a cloud-based project management software, and within that software we were able to give all stakeholders access to it. So all stakeholders across the business could initially see all of that project management or all of the Gantt charts or task lists or whatever they needed. And not only that, we were able to then collaborate. So a user or a stakeholder from the system could have a look at the system and go, this is what I need to do today. This is what's important. This is what the priorities are. And this is what the client needs. So they were able to do that. They were also able to dip into other people's projects or other clients' projects. We housed a lot of data within the system as well. So that data was accessible to everybody. So people didn't have to go and navigate themselves around various different rooms or archives to try and find data. It was easily accessible within the system with a good searchable function. The next evolution of that was to give the client access. So the system itself has a customer portal, and the client can get access to that portal. So any data that is salient to the project and salient to the client's needs or the sponsor's needs, they can access that through the portal. And we can also put document transfer through there as well. We can get access to all sorts of things with regard to the project, and they can see the timeline of the project as well. So without actually accessing someone on site, a client or a sponsor can go onto the system, look at the portal, and they can see the status of the project. And this is probably more important for crossing timelines across the world as well. So if we're dealing with people in the Far East, then they're accessing our activity a lot earlier in the morning than we are. And again, similarly in West Coast America, they can look at stuff after our business is shut for the day.
Great. So sponsors can just log on and just see the timeline of their project easily with the click of a button, for lack of a better term. Great. So let's move on and talk about your partnership models and pricing innovations, because there's a lot of talk about this in the industry at the moment. Traditional fee-for-service models are evolving. What alternative partnership or pricing structures are you exploring?
Yeah, this is a difficult one, and because we do find that the fee for service model is the industry is so accustomed to it, it is hard to break. And offering something that's an evolution of that or a real differentiator sometimes has a little bit of skepticism with it as well. So in our project offering, we tend to break out the component parts, and we'll say that those are a cost plus model maybe for certain component parts. We might wrap all kinds of things together. If there is a production part of it, then we'll do a traditional COGS model. So in a development project where we're taking something from its fetal stages of formulation and development all the way through to phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial, it might have multiple costing models or multiple pricing models within it. So the knowledge based stuff will still be fee for service. And then in our manufacturing end, we will tend to use unit costs. So the customers are only paying, and they understand what the unit cost is likely to be for its commercial use then as well. So that gives it a much better market appreciation of how the product will operate in the commercial sphere.
Mhm. From a site operations perspective, then, what does a successful partnership look like to you in terms of client engagement and collaboration?
Yeah, where we've seen our most successful projects, I guess, is where there's been full disclosure, full transparency between us and the client in the kind of formulation and development stages. And it's us as a site engendering trust for the client as well, or trust for the sponsor, and displaying and demonstrating that we have the knowledge and capability to look after their product. It's very nervous for a sponsor to hand over fully crafted and worked on, and now you're handing it over to essentially an unknown. So it is that complete transparency and disclosure, I think, is one of the vital components. So if we make a mistake or there is an error, very quickly we will inform the sponsor about that. But often we'll inform the sponsor that we've got a solution. We're also not afraid to say to a sponsor, we believe this way is the correct way, as opposed to what we're being instructed to by maybe a CMC consultant or something like that. We, in our very early stages, set all of our boundaries, our communication links, all of that. Nothing is hidden, and if that starts, it generally means it's quite a good project or a good journey for the project to go on.
Absolutely. Transparency is key in successful relationships. I guess, particularly for biotechs, maybe where they're handing over such a huge asset. It's like handing over their baby, I've heard people
Exactly.
say.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's move on then. Let's talk about sustainability and ESG commitments. Sponsors obviously are under pressure to reduce Scope 3 emissions, making CDMO environmental performance major selection criteria. What specific sustainability initiatives have you implemented, and what sort of operational challenges does that sort of come with?
Yeah, so we've noticed now on a couple of tenders, especially, and other areas that are very conscious of the environment, those questions are they're moving further on up the list for the criteria when requesting information. So, an SGS itself is an organisation that wants to have a good, sustainable business model from its environmental policies and things like that. Locally here at this site, 2 years ago, we covered our roof in solar panels, and that's generated 30% of our energy. We got rid of our gas boilers, so we don't have any consumption of fossil fuel on site at all. And in future projects that we've got in the pipeline, we're going to add more solar panels to new buildings and maybe a canopy in the car park. We want to have a look at a small wind turbine in our car park as well to try and generate some energy as well. We are potentially doing some building work over the next 2 to 3 years, and that being the case, we might put in heat pumps to try and generate some ground level heat pumps. And then we want to reclaim all our water. So we are in North Wales, and if you know anything about North Wales, you'll know that it rains a lot. And we've got a lot of roof, and we can reclaim that water. We've also got purified water system that we discharge unused purified water every day. So we're looking to reclaim that so we can bring that into the building to use for toilet flushing and various other things as well. We segregate all our waste. So we have got a ambition to get 95% of all our waste either reused or recycled. So we work with a waste carrier at the moment to try and do that. So we segregate everything down to food level, plastics, cardboard, card, all of that kind of thing. And the waste carrier gives us certificates of where that's gone to so we can prove that. And we're trying to get rid of a lot of our single-use stuff as well and get much more of a commitment to reusing all of that material as well.
Great. And what are the sort of costs associated with that, particularly the energy changes? Do you see that's a sort of a increased cost that you're willing to take, or long term, would it reduce costs?
So long term, it reduces costs. Like I said, the solar panels have reduced our energy consumption, well, energy bill by 30%. So actually, within 3 years, we'll be able to get the money back, the expenditure back that we spent putting them in and installing them. And I think that's the same for all of the other projects. I think we're comfortable if there is a payback of some degree and also or a cost reduction. So for example, our waste carrier, because we segregate all of the waste, then the waste carrier reduces the cost for them to take it away because they can deliver it straight to the recycling or reuse centre. So with all of these things, there is always an associated cost to do it, but equally there is also a cost reduction and up to 5-10 years payback, and we're okay with that.
Moving on, let's talk about supply chain resilience. How do you ensure supply chain resilience and business continuity at the site level with all the uncertainties going on? What redundancies or risk mitigation strategies do you need to build into your operations?
Yeah, it's an unstable world, isn't it?
To say the least,
And
yeah.
we're not immune to it. We have been hit with some instability in the supply chain as well. So again, I think with SGS being quite a large organization, they're very mature in dealing with the supply chain. So locally at this site, we try to build in supply chain resilience. So we'll have a primary supplier, but we'll also pick a secondary supplier, have that secondary supplier fully qualified for all our GMP materials, whereby there isn't that luxury to have maybe a secondary supplier or a resilient supplier, then we might overpurchase in the first instance just to ensure the continuity of the project and that we've got product on site here. But throughout that project, we're always looking for resiliency in the supply chain. And I think because SGS is such a large organization, we can deal with some of the larger suppliers as well that have naturally got some protection in their supply chain. But it is an area that we are very cognizant that it's a potential risk all of the time and there is potential failure. So when we do take on a new project, our supply chain evaluation is critical to the success of that project.
Right. That's an interesting strategy, having not quite the dual sourcing method, but having a main supplier and then a sort of backup supplier.
Yeah, I think it's part of SGS's just general supply chain strategy that they'll always have a resilient supplier.
Mm. Interesting. Looking at your facilities evolution then into the future, the next 5-10 years, what capability expansions or tech investments are you prioritizing?
So tech investments, we're looking to bring in smart factory. So we have a pharmaceutical manufacturing operation here. Like you mentioned in the introduction, we can do oral liquids, solid dose, topical creams, all of that kind of thing. And we're looking to kind of consolidate that into a larger scale or upscale it slightly so we can offer that more commercial offering to the rare disease market and maybe other kind of slightly smaller patient volume markets as well. So that's one of the things that we do, is that general expansion of our GMP manufacturing suite. At the same time, we want to introduce smart factory. We want to introduce smarter operations, automations, and maybe some cobot technology, so we can operate in a inert atmosphere without having putting the people at risk. And that will allow us to get on with doing various different products which require high containment at the moment. Maybe we can create an environment where we can do that much more easily, where we can have a digital twin, so someone's outside of the room operating the machinery that's inside of the room in that kind of nitrogen atmosphere. We want to also introduce extra technologies, so things like roller compaction, spray drying, other things that are common across the industry that we might not necessarily have at the moment, and we might have alternatives for that. But for us to be able to offer the variety of manufacturing capabilities, we need to have all of those offerings on site. From a technology point of view, the main thing will be bringing in that automation, having that kind of smart connected factory, so it gives us a much better data profile and gives us a much better status profile. So when clients log on to the portal, they can see exactly where their product is going, and it allows, at the same time, it allows us to be agile. So we can morph and change between different batch types, different product types quite easily, very quickly, and it can keep the unit cost down as well.
Right. And how do you balance capacity expansion with capability enhancement?
It's keeping an eye on the market, really. One of the stuff that we can do on this site, and that will always be around kind of small molecule activity. But we keep an eye on the market, and we're not against acquiring an aseptic site, for example, or acquiring that aseptic technology. We already have aseptic partners, so we can do the development here, and then we transfer the manufacture into one of our partner groups. So we can introduce new technologies that way, but we keep an eye on the market to see what the trends are. We also have a look at where we can fill any gaps. So if there is potentially gaps for roller compaction, or there are gaps for wet granulation, spray drying, we will look at those. We'll say we can now do that offering. I think there are potentially gaps in controlled drug manufacture, certainly in cannabinoid based substances for manufacture, which we've got capability and we can expand that. High containment areas that I mentioned before, we can also do that, but we would possibly look to expand on that as well. So it is generally just keeping an eye on the market, talking to our clients. They often have pipeline projects that they may be struggling to find someone who's got the suitable capability to do that. We can invest quite well. So if a client, a sponsor, has got a particular issue or a particular problem, then generally we will be able to provide a solution with a bit of investment as well. And that investment will generally serve us well for the future as well.
How do you keep an eye on the market? Is it that customer feedback loop?
Yeah, really reliant on that customer feedback. There are some shows every year that are conferences and events every year that will provide good insight into what's happening at the coalface. CDMO Live's one of those, but there are 2 or 3 other events across the calendar that will be talks there will be lectures that will provide a vital insight into what's happening in the market. We also go to trade shows as well. Some of our equipment manufacturers, they will go to the same shows as they do, and again, they will be able to provide some insight into what technologies are being purchased by whom, and where they're going to, what country they're going to as well. So we do a bit of that as well. We'll go to partner with some of our equipment manufacturers and go to their shows as well.
Yeah, it does just highlight the value of a conversation, doesn't it? And thank you for slipping in some event promotion there. Obviously, SGS will be joining us at CDMO Live in Rotterdam in May. So finally, Paul, as a closing note, if you were advising a biotech CEO on how to evaluate CDMOs in 2026, what criteria would you tell them actually matters versus what might just sound good in marketing materials?
Yeah, I think what they should look for in doing due diligence for a CDMO, Has that CDMO got demonstrable capability rather than just say that they have? Is there good evidence that they have done projects that are similar in the past? And what's their kind of service around the basics of formulation and development through to clinical manufacturing? Do they have the regulatory support? Could I put a project with this CDMO without actually onboarding a CMC consultant? If that's a confident yes, then I would have said that the CDMO is probably worth its salt. I think also we try and do this as a bit of a matter of course anyway, but if a CDMO is prepared to um, share their kind of financial status, if you like, what their growth has been for the last couple of years, whether that's been positive or negative, and what the growth projections are for the next couple of years. That can breed confidence into someone that they're not going to be subject to any poor market conditions, if you like. There is a lot of resilience within the business. We certainly get asked that. How confident are we that the business will be open in 3 years' time if someone's putting a larger project with us? And from our point of view, with SGS's backing, we can very confidently say that. And we have a number of clients that do say to us, "Well, we wish to ask that question of other people a couple of times." So I think it's not necessarily focus on the scientific capability only. That's a prerequisite. That's mandated as that's a must-have. But I have a look around that as well to see whether the regulatory knowledge is there, the specific sciences knowledge is there around the markets such as pediatrics, whether the business is sound financially, and whether there is a extra capability around the business, so insofar as they will not require CMC consultancy.
Great, Paul. Thanks a lot for this chat. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Dora.